Okay, so you're an IO psychologist, and you keep hearing about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But how can this AI actually help you do your job better?
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
We've got a ton of research and articles that you've sent us,
Yeah.
and we've gone through it all and pulled out the most interesting stuff to share with everyone.
What I think is so fascinating is that IO psychologists are finding ways to use ChatGPT for just about everything.
Yeah.
From analyzing those huge employee surveys to even like creating training programs that people are actually excited to take.
Yeah, and it's not even just about like replacing tasks with AI.
Right.
It's about doing things differently, maybe even better.
Yeah.
Like one of the articles mentioned using ChatGPT to like design these really realistic email scenarios for business communication training.
That's a great example.
And apparently it made the training way more effective because people felt like they were dealing with real-world situations.
It's really cool how AI can help us create these more immersive learning experiences. But before we get too far into all the examples, let's just make sure everyone's on the same page about what ChatGPT even is.
Right. For those of us who haven't been living on the internet for the past year, can you give us like the ChatGPT crash course?
Sure. So basically think of it as like this supercharged chatbot.
Good.
But instead of just making small talk, it can actually write different kinds of creative content and answer your questions in a really informative way. Even if your questions are open-ended or challenging or even strange, it's been trained on this massive amount of data.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Which is what lets it understand and generate text that sounds like a human wrote it.
So is it kind of like having this like super smart research assistant who can just like churn through tons of information and whip up these reports in the blink of an eye?
You could say that, but like any tool, it has its strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
ChatGPT is amazing at working with language, but it's not actually a human expert.
Yeah.
And it's really important to keep that in mind.
Okay, good point. It's not about just blindly trusting the machine. It's about using it intelligently.
Right.
So let's get into like the nitty-gritty here.
Okay.
The articles and research you sent highlight 4 key areas where ChatGPT can be a real game changer for IO psychologists.
Okay, so let's start with survey analysis.
Okay.
Imagine you've just finished this huge employee engagement survey. You've got mountains of data.
Oh, yeah.
Especially all those open-ended responses.
Right.
Which can be a goldmine of insights, but also a total nightmare to analyze manually.
Yeah.
ChatGPT can help you go through all of that in a fraction of the time.
Okay, that's definitely appealing. But how does it actually work? Does it just like spit out a generic report? Or can it really like get into the nuances of what employees are saying?
It's way more sophisticated than that.
Okay.
ChatGPT can actually identify themes and sentiment and even patterns in the data that you might not even notice at first.
Oh, wow.
And this can help you figure out like specific problems or areas for improvement within the organization.
So instead of just getting this like surface level summary,
right,
I could actually uncover hidden trends or insights that might have been missed otherwise.
Exactly. It's like having an extra pair of eyes, but with the ability to process information super fast.
Color me intrigued. What's the next area where ChatGPT shines for IO folks?
Job descriptions.
Okay.
We all know how important it is to have job descriptions that are clear and engaging and inclusive, but writing the perfect job description can be so time-consuming.
Yeah, for sure.
ChatGPT can help you streamline that process and make sure that your job descriptions are actually attracting the best talent.
Okay, but how does it actually make job descriptions better?
Well, for one thing, it can help you use language that is more inclusive and will appeal to a wider range of candidates. It can also help you spot any potential biases that might be hiding in your wording.
Oh, interesting.
Even if you're not aware of them.
So it's like having this like built-in sensitivity reader who can help me avoid any like unintended language that might discourage qualified candidates from even applying.
Precisely. It's all about making sure that your job descriptions truly reflect your company's commitment to diversity and inclusion.
All right, that's definitely a big win. What's next on our list of IO superpowers?
Okay, let's talk about training materials.
Okay.
We already talked about that email simulation example, but that's just the beginning. ChatGPT can help you create interactive learning modules and develop quizzes and even design entire training programs that are tailored to different learning styles and preferences.
This sounds like a dream for anyone who has ever had to create a training program from scratch.
I know.
But like, how much input do I actually have in the process?
Right.
Does ChatGPT just spit out a generic training module, or can I customize it to fit my specific needs?
You're definitely in the driver's seat here. ChatGPT is more like your creative partner,
Okay.
not your overlord.
Gotcha.
You decide on the parameters, like what are the learning objectives? Who is the target audience?
Okay.
What kind of tone do you want, and what format are you thinking about?
Yeah.
And ChatGPT generates the content based on your specifications.
Okay, so I'm not just getting this cookie-cutter solution.
Uh-huh.
I can actually make it fit the specific training needs of my organization.
Right?
That's impressive.
And because ChatGPT can generate content in all kinds of formats, you can actually create training experiences that are engaging and interactive and that work for different learning styles.
So, like, I could have text-based modules and interactive quizzes and maybe even some role-playing scenarios.
Exactly.
That's way more exciting than the typical PowerPoint snooze fest.
I know. The possibilities are pretty much endless.
All right, I'm loving this so far.
Yeah.
What's the final area where ChatGPT is proving to be a valuable asset for IO psychologists?
Let's talk about literature reviews.
Okay.
Staying up to date with the latest research is crucial in any field,
Yeah.
but especially in IO psychology, where new studies and findings are constantly emerging. But honestly, who has the time to read through mountains of research papers?
No one. So how does ChatGPT help with this very real problem?
Okay, imagine you're researching a specific topic.
Okay.
Let's say employee motivation.
Okay.
You can give ChatGPT a list of research papers that are relevant and ask it to summarize the key findings. It can analyze all that content super fast and give you a concise overview of the main points.
Wow.
Which can save you hours of reading and note-taking.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But can I really trust it to capture the nuances of, like, academic research?
It's really important to remember that ChatGPT is a tool. And like any tool, it has limitations.
Right.
It's great for getting a quick overview of the research landscape,
Yeah.
but you'll definitely want to critically evaluate those summaries and probably dive deeper into the original sources to get a more complete understanding.
Okay, so it's not about replacing my own critical thinking skills.
Right.
It's about using ChatGPT as a starting point
Exactly.
to make the research process more efficient.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
I like that.
It frees up more of your time to focus on the things that require your unique human expertise.
That's been a super helpful overview of how ChatGPT can actually make a real difference in the daily life of an IO psychologist.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to see the potential here.
It really is a powerful tool, and we've only just scratched the surface of what it can do. But before you go off and start plugging everything into ChatGPT, it's important to understand how to use it effectively and ethically.
Okay, that makes sense. We wouldn't want to unleash an AI monster on the workplace.
Right.
So how do we make sure we're using ChatGPT responsibly? What are the key things to keep in mind?
Well, first and foremost, it's really crucial to remember that ChatGPT is a tool.
Okay.
It's not a replacement for human judgment.
Right.
It's great at processing information and generating text, but it doesn't have any real-world experience or common sense.
So we can't just blindly trust everything it spits out.
Oh.
We have to use our own critical thinking skills to evaluate the output.
Yeah.
And make sure it's actually accurate and relevant to the situation.
Exactly. And it's also important to stay up to date on the latest developments and best practices for using ChatGPT.
Okay.
This technology is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So what works today might not work tomorrow.
Right. So it's not a set it and forget it solution. I need to be actively learning how to use it effectively and responsibly.
Right.
And I imagine that starts with understanding how to give ChatGPT clear instructions to get the best results.
You're exactly right. Crafting really effective prompts is crucial to unlocking ChatGPT's potential.
Okay.
It's kind of like having a conversation with this brilliant but very literal-minded assistant. You need to be specific about what you want and give clear instructions on the format and the tone and how much detail you're looking for.
Okay. So let's dive into the art of prompting.
Okay.
What are some tips for crafting prompts that will make ChatGPT sing?
Well, one of the most important things is to think about the outcome you want.
Okay.
Do you want a bulleted list? A paragraph, a table, a full-blown report.
Okay.
You have to be clear about the format you want.
Got it. So it's all about giving ChatGPT like a roadmap.
Right.
So it knows exactly where I want it to go. Can you give us some examples of how this might work in practice?
Sure. Let's say you're asking ChatGPT to help you create a diversity and inclusion training module.
Okay.
You could start with a prompt like this. Create a detailed training module on workplace diversity and inclusion formatted as a series of interactive exercises with clear learning objectives.
Okay, that's very specific.
Yeah.
It tells ChatGPT exactly what I want, both in terms of content and format.
Right.
And I love that idea of interactive exercises. That's way more engaging than just like reading through a bunch of text.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is you can get as creative as you want with your prompts.
Oh, cool.
You can even tell it what tone and style you want for the output.
So if I wanted something that was super formal and professional, I could just tell ChatGPT to write in that style.
Yeah.
And if I wanted something more conversational and fun,
Yeah.
I could do that too.
Exactly. The more you practice crafting those prompts,
Yeah.
the better you'll become at getting ChatGPT to deliver exactly what you need.
Wow.
It's like having this customized research and content creation machine at your fingertips.
Okay, this is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
IO psychologists are basically getting like a superpower upgrade with ChatGPT in their toolkit.
Right.
But before we get too carried away with all the cool things it can do,
Yeah.
let's take a moment to ground ourselves in the reality of what ChatGPT isn't.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Like, with any new technology, it's important to manage our expectations.
Right?
ChatGPT can be incredible,
Uh-huh.
but it's not a magic bullet.
So what are some of the limitations that we need to be aware of? Like, what are the things that ChatGPT just can't do no matter how hard we try?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the potential for bias.
Okay.
Remember that ChatGPT is trained on this massive data set of text and code, and that data can reflect existing biases in society.
So even though it's a machine, it can still inherit some of the same biases that we see in the real world.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be careful about checking for bias in the output and making sure that we're not accidentally perpetuating those harmful stereotypes
Right.
or discriminating against certain groups of people.
Okay, so bias is a big one. What else should we be cautious of?
Another challenge is the potential for inaccuracy. ChatGPT is really good at generating human-like text,
Yeah.
but it doesn't always get things right.
Yeah.
It can make factual errors or misinterpret information,
Oh.
and it can even fabricate data if it's not carefully monitored.
So even though we're using this really powerful tool, we can't just assume that everything it produces is accurate and reliable. We still need to do our due diligence and fact-check its output right.
Absolutely. Critical thinking skills are more important now than ever.
Yeah.
We need to be able to evaluate the information that ChatGPT gives us,
Oh.
cross-reference it with other sources,
Right.
and use our own judgment to decide if it's valid.
It sounds like using ChatGPT effectively requires like this balance of trust and skepticism.
Yeah,
We need to trust its capabilities, but also be skeptical of its limitations.
that's a great way to put it.
Hmm.
It's all about finding that sweet spot where human expertise and AI's analytical power complement each other.
This discussion of limitations has been really insightful.
Good.
It's a good reminder that AI is a tool.
Uh-huh.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
Right.
It's up to us as IO psychologists to make sure that we're using it responsibly and ethically.
I completely agree. We have this responsibility to guide the development and implementation of AI in a way that benefits both individuals and organizations. And I think we have this opportunity to use ChatGPT as a catalyst for positive change in the workplace.
This has been an incredible exploration of ChatGPT's impact on the world of IO psychology.
It has.
We've covered so much. From like the basics of how it works to real-world examples of its applications.
Yeah.
And of course, the importance of responsible use and ethical considerations. I'm feeling really energized and inspired by the possibilities.
Me too. It's a very exciting time to be working in this field. And as ChatGPT keeps evolving, I have no doubt that we'll see even more innovative and impactful applications emerge.
For sure.
But before we get too carried away with those future predictions, I think it's important to bring it back to the here and now.
Okay.
And focus on what this all means for IO psychologists who are listening right now.
Right.
And who are eager to start exploring ChatGPT.
That's a great point. We've talked about like the what and the how.
Yeah.
But now let's get to the so what.
Right.
What does it all mean for the listener and their work? What are the key takeaways they should be thinking about?
Great question. All right, so are you ready to actually see ChatGPT in action?
Oh, yeah. Let's hear how this tech is making a real difference.
Okay, so one area where we're seeing some really interesting results is employee onboarding. You know how starting a new job can be so overwhelming?
Oh, yeah.
There's just like so much information to take in and new people to meet and often just a ton of paperwork.
Oh, it's terrible.
And one company was really struggling with this.
Okay.
Their onboarding process was just way too long and tedious and honestly not very engaging for new hires.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that feeling of information overload.
Right.
So how did they use ChatGPT to fix it?
So an IO psychologist on their team had this idea
Okay.
to create a personalized onboarding chatbot
Hmm.
powered by ChatGPT.
Oh, wow.
And this chatbot basically acts like a virtual guide for all the new hires.
Oh, that's cool.
It answers their questions and gives them all the important resources,
Okay.
and even offers personalized tips based on their specific role and department.
That's a really clever use of AI. Instead of just like throwing a giant employee handbook at them,
Right.
new hires get this interactive on-demand resource. So did it actually make a difference?
Yeah, the impact was pretty amazing.
Okay.
New hires said they felt much more welcomed and supported and prepared for their new roles.
That's great.
Plus, because the chatbot was available 24/7,
Oh, way.
they could get information and answers to their questions whenever they needed them,
Oh, that's nice.
which really helped to reduce a lot of the anxiety and frustration.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like having this friendly and super knowledgeable mentor available at all times. That's a fantastic way to use technology to improve the employee experience.
Hmm.
Did it have any other positive effects for the company?
It did.
Okay.
Not only did it make the new hires happier,
Uh-huh.
but it also freed up the HR staff from having to answer the same basic questions over and over again,
Right.
which gave them more time to focus on more strategic initiatives,
Yeah.
like talent development and improving the company culture.
Talk about a win-win.
Yeah.
What other I/O challenges is ChatGPT being used to solve out there in the real world?
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about leadership development.
There was this multinational company that was looking for a more effective and engaging way to train their high-potential leaders. They wanted to move beyond those traditional classroom-style workshops and create something more personalized, a learning experience that would really connect with their leaders.
That's a great goal. But how did they actually make that happen? Like, how did they use ChatGPT?
So an IO psychologist who was working on the leadership program had this great idea to use ChatGPT to create customized leadership development plans for each participant based on each leader's individual strengths and weaknesses and career aspirations. ChatGPT could generate a personalized learning path
Wow.
with targeted resources,
Like, what kind of resources?
articles and podcasts, and even suggestions for potential mentors within the company.
Wow. That's taking personalized learning to a whole new level. It's like having a personal leadership coach right in your pocket. Did the leaders actually find it valuable? Yeah. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive.
Oh, wow.
Leaders felt that these personalized plans were way more relevant and engaging than just like a generic one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Everyone learns differently.
Right.
So having a program that can adapt to those individual needs is super powerful.
Exactly.
Did they use ChatGPT for anything else in this leadership development program?
They did.
Okay, what else?
They also used it to create these virtual coaching scenarios
Oh, interesting.
where leaders could practice having difficult conversations or giving feedback or delegating tasks. And they could do it all in the safe and interactive environment.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's like a virtual practice arena where you can work on your leadership skills without being afraid to mess up in real life.
Right.
That's a great idea. So what were the results?
Well, the leaders said they felt more confident and better equipped to handle those day-to-day challenges of being a leader.
That's awesome.
They also said that the virtual coaching scenarios really helped them to develop their emotional intelligence and their interpersonal skills, which are so critical for effective leadership.
These examples are so inspiring.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how ChatGPT is helping IO psychologists really push the boundaries of what's possible in the workplace.
It's really exciting to see how it's being used to solve real-world problems and create positive change.
For sure. But as we've talked about before, it's important to remember that ChatGPT isn't a perfect solution.
Right.
It has limitations. And we need to be aware of those as well.
For sure. So what are some of the key limitations we need to keep in mind as we start to explore ChatGPT in IO psychology?
Right. We can't just assume that AI will solve all of our problems without any potential downsides. What are some of the things we need to watch out for?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is the potential for bias.
Right. We talked about that earlier.
Which is why it's so important to be really vigilant about checking for bias in the output. And making sure that we're not accidentally discriminating against certain groups of people. So how can we do that effectively?
That's a crucial point. It's not enough to just trust the AI without question. We need to be actively checking for bias in the output and making sure we're not accidentally discriminating against certain groups of people. How can we do that effectively?
Well, it takes a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
First, we need to be aware of our own biases and how they might influence the way we use and interpret ChatGPT's output.
Right.
Second, we need to be mindful of the data that ChatGPT was actually trained on.
Okay.
And be really critical of any outputs that seem to be perpetuating harmful stereotypes or discriminatory practices.
So it's about being really intentional and thoughtful about how we use this technology. It's not just a set it and forget it solution.
Right.
It requires constant monitoring and critical evaluation.
And we also need to be transparent about how we're using ChatGPT, especially when it comes to things like candidate selection or performance evaluations. People have a right to know how their data is being used and how AI might be influencing decisions that could affect their lives and careers.
Absolutely. Transparency and fairness are so important.
Yeah.
What other limitations should IO psychologists be thinking about?
Another big one is the potential for inaccuracy.
Okay.
ChatGPT is really good at generating text that sounds like a human wrote it.
Right.
But it doesn't always get things right.
Okay.
It can make factual errors or misinterpret information. It might even fabricate data if you don't guide it carefully and monitor it.
So even though it's this really powerful tool, we can't just assume that everything it gives us is accurate and reliable.
Exactly.
We still have to double-check its work.
Right. Yeah, critical thinking skills are more important than ever.
I agree.
We need to be able to evaluate the information that ChatGPT gives us and check it against other sources.
Right.
And use our own judgment to decide if it's valid.
So using ChatGPT effectively is kind of like walking this tightrope between trust and skepticism.
Yes.
We have to trust its capabilities, but also be skeptical of its limitations.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It's all about finding that sweet spot where human expertise and AI's analytical power work together.
This whole conversation about the limitations of ChatGPT has been so insightful.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
Right.
It's our responsibility as IO psychologists to make sure that we're using it in a way that's responsible and ethical.
I completely agree. We have this responsibility to guide the development and implementation of AI in a way that benefits everyone, both individuals and organizations. And we also have this amazing opportunity to use ChatGPT to make the workplace better for everyone.
This has been such an incredible exploration of ChatGPT's impact on the world of IO psychology.
I know, right? We've covered so much ground.
We really have. The basics of how it works to real-world examples of its applications.
Yeah.
And, of course, the importance of responsible use and ethical considerations. I feel so energized and inspired by all the possibilities.
Me too. It's a really exciting time to be in this field.
Definitely.
And as ChatGPT continues to evolve, I have no doubt that we'll see even more innovative and impactful applications emerge.
Oh, for sure. But before we get too carried away with future predictions, I think it's important to bring it back to the here and now.
Yeah.
And focus on what this all means for all the IO psychologists who are listening.
Exactly.
And who are excited to start exploring ChatGPT for themselves.
That's a great point. We've talked about the what and the how, but now it's time for the so what.
Right. Yeah. What does it all mean for our listeners and their work? What are the key takeaways?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about all the cool things ChatGPT can do for IO psychologists, but I think the big question on everyone's mind is like, what does this actually mean for me and my work?
You know, I think the key takeaway here is that ChatGPT gives you this chance to work smarter, not harder. It's like having this tireless assistant who can handle all those like really time-consuming, data-heavy tasks, which frees you up to focus on the things that AI just can't do.
Yeah, like all that human stuff.
Exactly. The things that make IO psychology so unique, things like building those strong relationships and coaching leaders and really understanding like all the nuances of organizational culture.
Okay, so it sounds like it's more about like a partnership.
Yeah.
Where ChatGPT handles the data and the content creation and maybe some of that basic research. But it's still my expertise that guides how it's used.
Exactly.
And how to interpret all that output and making sure it's being used ethically and effectively.
It's like that old saying.
With that?
You know, technology should work for us, not the other way around.
Right. We're not slaves to the machines.
Exactly. And that's the attitude we need to have when we're thinking about ChatGPT. It's a tool that can really help us do our jobs better. But it doesn't replace human judgment and expertise.
Okay, so I'm getting the big picture, but I'm also thinking about the practical side.
Yeah.
Like, how do I actually start using ChatGPT in my day-to-day work?
The best way to start is to just dive in and experiment.
Okay.
The free version of ChatGPT is a great way to get your feet wet.
Okay.
Just play around with different prompts, see what it can do, and see if it can help you with any of the tasks you're already doing.
So it's kind of like this sandbox where I can just test things out and learn without any pressure.
Exactly. And as you get more comfortable, you can look into the paid versions, which give you some more advanced features.
Okay.
Plus, there are a ton of online resources and tutorials.
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
And even whole communities where you can connect with other IO psychologists who are already using ChatGPT.
So it's like joining this community of like AI-savvy IO folks and learning from each other.
Exactly. The more we all work together and share what we're learning, the more we can unlock ChatGPT's true potential for our field.
It's exciting to think about all those possibilities that are opening up.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with all the hype, what advice would you give to those IO psychologists who are just starting out with ChatGPT? What are like the most important things to remember?
I'd say the most important thing is to approach it with a spirit of curiosity and be willing to experiment and to never stop learning.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to just dive in and try new things. Play around with it. Test its limits and see how it can help you work smarter and more effectively.
So it's about embracing that whole lifelong learner thing and knowing that the world of AI is constantly changing.
Exactly. ChatGPT is a powerful tool,
Yeah.
but it's just one tool in your IO toolbox.
Right.
The real magic happens when you combine its capabilities with your own expertise and creativity and that passion you have for making a positive impact in the workplace.
This has been such a great deep dive into the world of ChatGPT and what it means for IO psychology. We've covered so much. But I think the biggest takeaway is that AI is here to stay, and it's changing the way we work.
I agree. And by embracing the potential of AI while being aware of its limitations, IO psychologists can really be at the forefront of shaping the future of work, a future that's more human-centered and data-driven and full of exciting possibilities.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought to consider. If ChatGPT can already do all of this, just imagine what new possibilities will come up as this technology keeps evolving.
I know.
How can you use AI to make a positive impact on your work and in the world?
The future is full of potential. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.